duct coming over the wall with it, right at the bottom of it, a little sign saying, "Speak here." Brazil grasps, if you like, that kind of retro-futurity about London, the idea that it's looking back to an era in which technology was more effective.
I remember in the film just having to do sheets and sheets and sheets of receipts and documents, and it was Terry was a stickler for getting everyone right. You know, that's not right. That has to be the receipt of the receipt.
Sign here, please. There. Thank you. Same again, please. What's that? Press harder this time. Good.
Oh, but this is all about.
That is your receipt for your husband. Thank you. And this is my receipt for your receipt.
We would probably create the best possible, oppressive totalitarian state because we have the most small-minded, petty officials imaginable. Nobody likes it when the men from the council come round and tell them what to do.
In the British vision of dystopia, petty bureaucracy and brutal torture go hand in hand. Terry Gilliam's Brazil paints a picture of doom and gloom on an epic scale.
Amongst the things I admired about Brazil, cut to the chase, one was just the visuals. The visuals and the visual imagination and display in Brazil is just stunning. But it also had the bravery to have a really, really dark ending. I mean, that didn't work in America, so they didn't have that. They changed the ending. But the ending is just spellbinding. I mean, it's a real sort of sucker punch.
The way in which Brazil shows the terror of the state is not in the way that it appeared in 1984, which is the secret police apparatus. What it actually draws on is something that was much more contemporary and real, and that was the death squad and the torture chamber, the kind of things that are in fact going on at that very time in Central America.
Brazil and 1985 were not the only works of science fiction to tackle Orwell's 1984. Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale describes a regime of totalitarian hell set in present-day America.
My rule for The Handmaid's Tale was that I wasn't going to put anything into it that human societies hadn't already done. So one way or another, all those bits and pieces, I assembled them together in a somewhat different way, but we've done it all. We're capable of every single bit of it.
In The Handmaid's Tale, most of the population are infertile. The few women who can have children are enslaved by the state and forced to hide themselves away from the rest of the world with the single mission of producing babies for rich, childless couples. Modesty is invisibility, said Aunt Lydia. Never forget it. To be seen is to be, her voice trembled, penetrated. What you must be, girls, is impenetrable. She called us girls.
If you are dealing with a really repressive regime, you can't just walk in and say to somebody on the street, "So how are things?" They're not going to say they're really terrible. They're going to say, "Fine," because if they don't say fine, they'll be killed. The pendulum always is swinging between extreme license, which is probably about where we are now, the anything goes kind of thing, and extreme repression. And the best place to live is probably when it's right in the middle.
Watching from the island shore, we've seen totalitarian regimes come and go. We've worried about Americanization, overpopulation, brainwashing, and even reality television.
There certainly was a distinctive British sort of greyness about a lot of science fiction, real sort of contrast between American science fiction, which was very much reflected American, well, the fact that the Americans regarded themselves as having won the Second World War, and it's all can-do, and it was great, and it's brilliant, and the future is going to be super and wonderful and brilliant, and whereas British science fiction did genuinely, in almost the extent of a cliche, reflect the great sort of the loss of empire and the days of austerity that lasted long after the Second World War.
Fears, not hopes, have shaped our visions of the future. The biggest worry has been about giving up our identity, of being controlled by the state, and losing our individuality.
The British vision of the dystopia is always, the individual being crushed by bureaucracy. This may well have something to do with the British temperament and the British experience.
The notion of a free individual with an imagination and creativity and difference from other people is something no utopia can contain.
In a dystopia, you don't have choice and free will because conditions are imposed upon you. And in a utopia, you don't need choice and free will because what would you need them for? Everything's perfect.
There is something else about the organization of utopias and dystopias that ideally suits the British temperament.
Class has always been very important in British fiction as a whole, and inevitably it affects British utopian and dystopian fiction to an inordinate extent, so that one does, in fact, get a lot of English utopian and dystopian fiction, which is hypersensitive to issues of class.
Even now, at the beginning of the 21st century, the two giants, 1984 and Brave New World, are still frighteningly relevant for defining our future.
For a while it looked as if 1984 was going to win, but then the wall came down and we thought, well, that's the end of that Brave New World. We're just all going to go shopping and have sex, forever after, and that will be the end of it. But that was wrong too, because now we have 1984 coming back with a vengeance. And Big Brother really is watching you, and Big Brother wants to watch you a lot more, for your own good.
It seems that if we are going to guard ourselves against terrorism, something like that might be an advantage. And of course, on the other hand, you say, well, where has liberty gone? Where has privacy gone? And it's, I think, to the credit of the utopian tradition that it foresaw this dilemma.
Tomorrow is a lovely day.
Next Monday on 4, the final part of The Martians and Us. Next, tonight, the tension ratchets up a notch for the brilliant and daring remake of a cult sci-fi classic.
If today your heart is weary, if every little thing looks gray, just forget your troubles and learn to say, tomorrow is a lovely day.
BBC4's British science fiction